going on, everybody? Once again, back, it's the incredible Dale Valor Inner Game podcast. And as always, have my trusted confidant who's newly fed, Shabam. And
hello, guys.
Yeah, like, sometimes life throws a curveball a little bit, and so we kind of had to pull an audible and kind of go a different direction with this one. So we were doing a little game planning, and one of the things that we were talking about was difficult conversations. Now, that's something that everybody experiences, and we're going to dive super deep into that because I have to have difficult conversations all the time. I talk to myself. But
Yep.
But if you're new to the podcast, I appreciate you being here. If you're somebody that's been checking in regularly, I thank you for that as well. And I'm glad that you keep coming back, and which tells me that you're getting something out of it. Tells me that there's some stuff here, knowledge that we're dropping that resonates with you. And that's dope, because that's the whole purpose of this. Sometimes I get asked, what is inner game? My definition for inner game is the relationship that you have with yourself. It's hard to have good relationships, whether it's in business, with friends, family, romantically, dating. If the relationship with you sucks, how is it, as an extension, how are your other relationships going to work? And it's funny, man, on social media, and like sometimes I see it in the Inner Game Facebook group that we have. If you're not a member, I always drop the link in the description for the video. So if you're not a member, make sure that you are. It's a super dope group, man. There's 3,800 guys in there, all helping each other. It's a real community, man. And one of the things that I see very often is guys like that where they're they have a kind of a negative outlook on life. Like they kind of strike me as like Charlie Brown or Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It's just like, oh, woe is me. Everybody sucks. Everything sucks. And really what they're saying is that the things in their life sucks, and so why does it suck? It's not because they suck as an individual. It's that their mindset sucks. If they shift their mindset and start looking to things a little bit more positively, you're going to attract positive things into your life. You may say that's woo-woo-y or whatever. And I don't even mean that as on some like cosmic type of karma type of thing. But what I mean by that is if you go out and you put out positive energy to the world, you do things for people, you go out of your way to help people, things like that. Those types of things will reciprocate. Will it always reciprocate? No. And that's when sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations, right? Because if you're going out and you're we'll just say in a relationship sense, all right? If you're the one that's always, trying to set up plans, you're the one that's always initiating everything. Maybe it's sexually, maybe it's just events, going out to eat, whatever. You're the one that's always doing that type of thing, which I get to an extent. As the man, I kind of feel like, you should be leading and things like that. But there's also something to be said for support. And there's always something to be said for that reciprocity. It doesn't have to come back the same way that it went out. Meaning, yeah, sure, okay, fine. You're the one making the plans, but she should also contribute. She should also contribute from a feminine standpoint, okay?
Yep.
And if those things aren't being reciprocated, like it's a one-way street. And so sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, because that is not a pleasant conversation to bring up,
True. Yep.
I know for me, you know, I'm much more, I would say, adapted to difficult conversations than I used to be. When I was coming up, I would avoid unpleasant conversations like the plague. I was very non-confrontational. All right. And that was something I had to work on about myself, and but once I did, I started realizing that by having some of these difficult conversations, though it might not seem pleasant in the moment, and it's not, usually, it ultimately for the betterment, right? The way I look at it is kind of like this. Sometimes you might, suffer an injury from like maybe a sports injury or something like that, right? And we'll just say you happen to fracture your leg. All right. So you go to the doctor, they get you set up, maybe put a cast on it, whatever they're going to do. All right. Get you fixed up, patched up, and get you on out of there. Well, we'll just say that it doesn't set right. All right. So the healing process is impeded, and you're never going to walk correctly if this situation is not corrected the way that it should be. So sometimes that doctor has to re-break your leg in order to, okay, this wasn't set right before. Now let me get in here and do this, get this thing straightened out. So he re-breaks your leg. Now that seems awful. You know what I mean? That is not a situation that I would want to go through, but I would rather that than like I'm just hobbling around for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
My leg's not right. So that's what I mean by difficult conversation. Sometimes, it's the medicine that you need, not that you want. You know what I mean?
Like you just have to sometimes make that choice. Like I do understand. Like sometimes, especially because we don't want to hurt people. Like humans are genuinely, like as far as I believe, are genuinely kind, and they don't want confrontation in general. So whenever you're in a situation where you have to say it, but you also know that thing is gonna hurt the other person. Most people, and including us, we have done that at times also. We choose not to say it, or we choose to ignore it and let it go, even though it, like rubs you the wrong way, or let's say like you feel it's wrong, like or unfair to you, like you said, like and like for us to actually like like level up in life, we need to have those difficult conversations. Like you said, even though we don't like to, but we need to. Like
right.
That's exactly
absolutely 100%. And it doesn't necessarily just mean like in a relationship sense with with a woman or whatever. I mean, this could be professionally too. Maybe you've been at your job for 5 years and you've never gotten a raise, but yet you put in good work. That can be an uncomfortable conversation to address your boss and be like, listen, we need to make something happen here because like, look at everything that I'm doing. I'm bringing in this company all this money. I feel as though I'm due, for a raise. So that can be an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, family members. I mean, God knows that there's many uncomfortable conversations that can arise inside of family dynamics.
Families.
You got, sure. I mean, sibling rivalries, you have maybe you have a domineering parent, maybe, I mean, there's no end to what that can look like, and so, these are all conversations that need to be had though. If it's one of those things, what you resist persists, it's not just going to take care of itself. It's not just going to, just magically come to some conclusion that goes your way. If it does come to a conclusion, it's probably not going to go your way, honestly, unless you start setting some boundaries, start, saying what it is that you actually want. Right. People are so afraid a lot of times to say what it is that they want, right. And the way I look at it is, I may have brought this up in another podcast, but I'll say it again. You know, it's like going, like you walk into a pizza place and you're letting them dictate to you what you're gonna have, and you're still gonna pay for it. It's not like they're giving it to you. You know,
Yeah.
they're just like, you walk in and they're just like, well, you know, say in your mind you want, you know, a pizza with pepperoni on it, and they're like, nope, you know, like, well, here you go, man. Here's your pizza with mushrooms. And you're like,
Pineapples.
yeah, but I want a pepperoni, you know?
Yeah.
But you never said it. And they're just like, well, here you go.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be $3, please. You know, so,
Yep.
So you're really paying twice. You're paying with your cash,
That's,
and you're not getting what you want.
yep, exactly. So that's like, yeah.
So, you know, there's many difficult conversations that can be had and should be had, you know, and the longer you wait to do it, the tougher it's going to be, usually, you know.
Yeah.
Not always the case, but, you know, I think there's something to be said for being tactical about when you have difficult conversations and things like that, you know. You might not want to bring up, you know, like your girl's cheating on you, like at a family reunion, or you know what I mean? Like, it's
like, place. Read the room, please. Read the room.
Right, exactly. Calibration. So, but yeah, man, I mean, what's your strategy for having difficult conversations?
I try to be polite, but at the same time firm as to, you know, like what's actually bothering me. And like, I mean, I generally try to be like straightforward about it. Like, I don't like beating around the bush, even though some people might perceive it to be a bit harsh. Like, it's better out there rather than, you know, back in, like, you know, like people tend to do that, you know, they will talk to someone behind their back rather than, you know, like say face to face that, you know, okay, you did something that I did not like, that was shit, you need to, you know, fix it, or something along those lines. So I personally prefer, like, even to me, say, let's say I do something wrong, I would really appreciate if the person just comes and tells it to me, to my face, rather than him telling, you know, 10 other people that, you know, he was unfair to me, like he did, whatever. I might have done a mistake. I'm not saying I'm human. Of course, I'm going to do something wrong. But, you know, like, I would rather that you tell me, I understand it. Okay, I made a mistake and I apologize for it and I try to correct it. You know, there's something I can do, like, about it, rather than, you know, having it. And I know it's like a difficult conversation, saying like, I did something that, you know, that somehow caused some, you know, side effect, or like, I don't know, like caused, maybe, let's say I did something that caused his brand or his business to suffer. Let's assume something like that happens. That's a difficult conversation to have with me. But at the end of the day, if that really happened because of me, I would actually try to rectify it. You know, I'll see how I could help him, you know, like get on with his, like, you know, how I can basically help him get back. That sort of a thing, especially if he's a friend. Like, it's just out of ethics, man. Like, you know, you do something, especially like it's unintentional and it happens, then, you know, you like, even though it's unintentional, you kind of have to fix it because it happened because of you. And like, you know, when you do that, in case like the same thing happens from him, he'll also do the same for you, because, you know, you just showed as a best example of how to have that difficult conversation and get it sorted. That just raises your level. And, you know, like anyone who hears that story and that person itself will have huge respect for you. He might not agree with you at that exact second, or may feel offended or whatever, but he will feel respect for you, like sooner or later. So
no doubt. And you know, it's funny, like you said, like, you know, come to me and address the situation. Don't tell 10 other people, and then I got to hear about it through the grapevine, you know? And then what you have is like that classic case of a telephone game. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, it's it starts off where it's like, oh, Shabam dropped the ball on this project that you're working on, right? By the time it gets back to you, it's like, hey man, I heard that you broke into this guy's house and killed his children. You know, it's like,
No, no,
what?
like nice life, but exactly.
But yeah, man, you know, and that's the thing is a lot of times what people will do is they'll put up these uh like passive aggressive tactics, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't, all that does is just make room for resentment and bitterness, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing to be gained by passive aggressive behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that does is, you know, make the one party that you know seemingly did something wrong wonder why this person is like acting so strange, and then
Yeah.
this person is not only upset, that's why they're being passive aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
but now they're getting more upset and more frustrated because this person isn't getting it, and
Yep,
so why
exactly.
this person is upset, you know what I mean?
Yep.
and and nothing gets fixed, it just gets
Yeah,
worse,
just worse. Yep, exactly.
right? So, you know, I think one of the best ways to, I was just telling one of the students this, I mean, yesterday, maybe 2 days ago.
Mm.
Um, you know, the way that I like to do something like that, if we're talking about calling somebody out, you know, or
Mm.
you know, to correct some type of behavior or correct something,
Mm.
you know, is to kind of do like a compliment sandwich, if you know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
What
Right.
in essence, what I want to do is I want to separate the behavior from the person, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because when you come like, and I, let me say this, I would rather you be direct and you know, like bring it up than do nothing at all or be passive aggressive. But I still think being super upfront and super direct, it makes the other person defensive,
Yep.
you know.
Sure.
And when that other person is defensive, now what can happen a lot of times is either they don't own up to it, or um, they take the accusation into a totally different direction. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like say I'm going to come to you, Shabam, and I'm like, yo, you were supposed to do, we'll just say, I don't know, man, the Modern Flirting website, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
if I come to you and I'm like, what is this? Like, this is trash, man. Like, how could you possibly think that this is good? What is the matter with you? You know, you're probably going to be like, well, hold up.
What?
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
exactly. Now you're going to start getting defensive about it,
yep.
You know?
Yep.
As opposed to, say, if I come at it the other way and I'm like, dude, thank you so much for putting that website together, dude. There's a lot of it that I really liked. There's a couple of things in there that I think that we could probably change that I just really wasn't feeling, you know, but you know, your turnaround time is quick and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure you'll get it figured out. You know what you're doing.
Yep.
Now I've empowered you.
Yep. Exactly.
Right? As opposed to, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yep.
So now not only is the solution, you know, the website being fixed, that's going to happen. You feel good about it. You're empowered to do it. And everything that I wanted out of it is going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for both people, right? So, and I mean, that goes along with anything. I want the person coming away in those conversations to feel like that they made a mistake or their behavior is not indicative of who they are as an individual. You know, it's out of character. You know, maybe it's like with a girlfriend or somebody you're dating or something like that. You know, maybe you had set a boundary that maybe you have to get up for work early. You know, 5 days a week. You got to get up at 5 a.m. All right. So you can't really be on the phone at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
You gotta get your sleep in.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll say that we'll say that she calls at 1 a.m. All right. And you answer the phone because maybe it's an emergency, like whatever.
Yeah.
And she just wants to chit chat. All right.
Mm.
And you're like, hey, listen, like that's cool. Like I'm glad you called, but I got to be up at work for work in like 4 hours. Like
Yeah.
can we talk about this tomorrow? She's like, oh, okay, cool. And then you go back to sleep, whatever. Then the next day she does it again, and you're like, hey, remember what I was saying yesterday? Like that like I got to get my sleep. And she's, oh, I'm sorry, I totally forgot about that. My bad. And then she does it a third time. Okay. Now at this point, this is something that is going to have to be addressed because it's not a one-off anymore. This is a pattern. This is a behavior, right? So now you're going to have a quote unquote difficult conversation because, you don't want to like make her angry or upset her or anything like that, but at the same time, this can't persist, So in that type of situation, same thing. You know what? I really dig the type of person that you are. Like, it's rare to find somebody that that has the character and qualities that you do. And I really like the fact that, you feel free enough to just give me a call whenever, that type of thing. Like, I really do like that. But listen, like I said before, you can't be calling me late like that. Like I've got to get my sleep. So, just from here on out, if it happens again, I'm not answering my phone. As a matter of fact, my ringer is going to be off at night from now on. Like I won't even hear it, so don't even try. But, but again, like I do appreciate the fact that you feel like you can reach me whenever.
Yeah. And you want to spend time with me and all that.
I'm on your mind and things like that. I do appreciate that though. That's really cool. So as opposed to being like, listen, I told you 3 times, don't call me at that time of night. I got to get up in the morning, like, well, I don't know how you would think that this is acceptable behavior. Now she's gonna be like, well, you did this and you did this and you did this. I didn't say anything, now you're like, now you're put on the defensive. You're like, yeah, well, when that happened, and that's a totally different thing because of this and this and this and this, So now you're not even talking about the phone calls anymore. Now you're talking about something completely different.
Yeah, and you're losing sleep at the same time. So
yeah, exactly. So they, framing it in a way that it's like, I like you as an individual. Don't like this behavior. There's an old saying in church, hate the sin, love the sinner. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, don't like what you're doing, but love you as a person.
Yep.
So I think that's a really good way to handle that. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people doing with difficult conversations is this happens all the time. And as a matter of fact, I had this very conversation again with a student just recently, sometime this week, is having I'll lay out the scene. Okay. So I'm going to refrain from using names and occupations because I have a tendency to out people on accident. So this particular student, he had moved to a different part of the country than this, from where this girl that he was kicking it with was living. Okay, so they lived in the same city. All right. And they both had similar occupational paths. All right. They're both in the same field. He's already doing it and she's studying to do it. Okay. And so the plan apparently, to my understanding, was that once she, and I almost said what the job was, once she gets done with her schooling and pass her tests and this sort of thing, that she was going to move to where he was,
Right.
And but it was, it's going to be some time, This isn't something that's like, you just run down to the DMV and, fill out a form and here's your license, much more complicated than that. So, so they're separated. And by the way, they're not exactly like in a relationship. It's kind of like that. Like they had been out a bunch of times. They, had slept together, and but they weren't like in a formal
relationship. More like friends with benefits. Like, not even
I would suggest more than that. Yeah. But yeah, so
basically on like the cusp of going from friends.
Yeah, It was heading in the relationship direction, like full force. Basically, is my understanding. So, So anyway, he had noticed that her level of investment in terms of like communication, basically, I mean, that was the crux of everything. Her communication had like really slipped to a large degree after he had moved. Like it would kind of like be in this like roller coaster type of thing. For a week, it would be cool. For the next week, not so cool. For the next week, cool. The next week, not so cool, And so he was asking me, like, how should he's like, I'm willing to walk. I don't want to walk, away from this. I don't want to, but I will. But how can I call her out on her behavior? Because what was happening too was he was setting up time to like, have like a FaceTime call and things like that and that kind of stuff. And then she would flake, all that kind of stuff. And so he's like, how do I call her out? I was thinking of sending her this. And so he kind of like sent me like, and they were already kind of talking about it. So he had sent me some screenshots. And then he was like, I was thinking of saying this. And there's this big wall of text, and I was like, dude, by no means have this conversation over text message.
Like, yeah, exactly. That's a disaster. That's a disaster.
Yeah. That's just like, I'm like, why would you have this conversation over text? Like, I get it, like it's a little bit easier. It's easier to like type
face
out
the person.
Send than actually verbalize it, right? Like, but
always.
It makes it a little less difficult, but it also makes it a little less effective.
Yeah, and a bit insensitive to like the other person who's like receiving the text, especially for such a topic.
Well,
I would say. I mean, like
maybe.
I mean, depends what he's gonna say. I don't know the text, but if you're gonna say something that can be perceived as offensive, that's a very risky gamble. Personally, I would say, because you may have meant it factually, but because that person is reading from their state of mind. So something as you've gained weight recently, something like that. Okay, let's say the statement is this. Someone who's in a funny mood, he'll like, yeah, right, and she'll laugh it off. If she's in a pissed mood, she's gonna be like, this bastard just called me fat. And like how that's gonna spiral, right?
By the way, complete side note here. Did you see in the Discord, for those that don't know, Modern Flirting has its own Discord. If you want to know how you could be a part of that community, feel free to let me know. Okay. But did you see that in the Discord? Jamie and a couple of the guys going back and forth about what one of the guys had put as far as like a Hinge prompt, for like online dating. Did you see that?
I didn't check it. I saw the messages. I was about to check it, but I didn't check it properly. I mean, there were multiple. I saw one. I'm not sure if it's the same one. Like, which one did you were talking about?
Because dude said, and he didn't mean anything by it. You know what I mean? But it was like super nag. But he didn't mean it as a nag. You know what I mean?
Nag. Yeah.
What he said was, he was like, "Wow, that's a lot of fabric." Talking about like something she was wearing. Like, like everybody's like, dude, you just called her fat, man. but that the whole reason I even thought of that was based on what you're saying right now. In that,
Yeah, like
how many times have you sent a text to somebody and it's completely misinterpreted? I
multiple
know I
times,
have many times.
multiple. Like I don't even want to say it. Like it's just never works.
Yeah, basic conversation and things like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Like okay, like that's fine. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. You're sending a picture, you're sending a meme, or you just like basic conversation, okay? But when you're talking about something that might have to do with your relationship. You're calling her out on something. You're trying to have a difficult conversation. Doing that through text message, is a little bit disingenuous, in my opinion. And like something that you said a couple minutes ago is it not being respectful to the other person, or at least them feeling that way. Yeah, I could see how some people would feel that way. My guess is a lot of people would actually prefer it to get it through text message just because it makes the conversation a little bit easier, but at the same time, it's not about easy. It's about getting to the crux of the problem and doing it through text messaging. I liken it to navigating a minefield, man, because you see like one wrong thing even if like 99% of this big wall of text makes sense and it's landing, one wrong word that you accidentally, like an autocorrect or like for me, I don't know if you've noticed this before, Shimon, but I notice it a lot. I'm mildly dyslexic, okay? And when I'm typing something fast, I'll forget words. Like I'm
I do that, so I know that also.
And so like sometimes I have to go back and edit, like posts and on social media and things like that, because it's like that doesn't even make sense. I just did it today, as a matter of fact. I was like, wait a minute, like am I reading this right? And I was like, I forgot the word would. Like what would you name this? And I forgot that word completely. So I just have a habit of doing that kind of thing. And so, if I do that over a big important text and say I forget a key word, now the flavor of that text, the context of it and everything is completely misinterpreted. And now it's about circling back to try to like explain it, because they're like, wait, but you said this. And they're like, well, I said that, but that's not what I meant. I forgot this word. You know what I mean? Now you're talking about communication versus the actual problem.
Actual problem. Yep, exactly.
So, and on top of that, now that other party that you're trying to check or whatever, they already kind of know what you're getting at. And so now they're on the defensive.
Yeah, by default, they're on defensive. So like that's
so
exactly the reason.
Twice as hard.
Yep, exactly. And I know, like, see, for example, the way you just showed it to us, right? Because of your voice, your tonality, your actions, I could say that it was coming from the right place. If you're reading it like a text message, like literally, hey, Shubham, you did this, like, that seems like that's very hard to see what you actually meant,
right?
Because the emotion is not conveyed behind it. And especially for conversations that involve emotions, face to face, like that, I would always suggest, because like you said, because that emotion and the tonality, the hand gestures are not present, what you mean to say can be interpreted completely differently just because of,
absolutely.
If you, and it can just go, and you don't want that to be the reason why everything else falls apart. Like the actual reason gets left aside. You said something or it got misinterpreted and it just, it's a rolling snowball that leads to like mass destruction. Like, I mean, I've experienced that literally in my life, so I can tell, man. Like one conversation is like, it just goes, I'm like, I never even said that. Like what?
Yeah, man. I mean, like for instance, in like what you were saying before, it's like depending on somebody's mood, it could be received one way versus another way. This is an example of that. So like maybe my wife, this happens often, by the way, where she'll text me something and I'll give a one word response. because that's what I feel is to be necessary for what it is that she texts. And then she'll text me back and she'll be like, why are you mad? And I'm like, not mad at all, like not one bit am I angry, And I'm like, now I'm like, well, what are you talking? Why do you think I'm mad? And she's like, well, you said this. I'm like, yeah, I said this because that's what was necessary for the question that you asked. Or whatever. So, so those types of things can get misinterpreted really, really easily. So when you're going to have a difficult conversation, I mean, to me, it would make the most sense to do it face to face. Sometimes that's not feasible, right? I mean, like the student that I was talking about, they're in two different parts of the country. He can't just come out and just have this one conversation, So, but at a minimum, do it on the phone.
Minimum phone FaceTime. Like FaceTime recommended because you can see how that person is feeling, and you can judge like how strongly you want to, like, okay, is it okay to proceed, or do you want to like chill her out a bit and then again proceed side of thing. Like it's calibration, like you said, you can calibrate properly if you see her reaction, her mood, her tonality, everything. On text you can't. On phone at least you hear the voice, so you can tell when someone's upset or not, but
no doubt. So that, to me, that's the way to handle it, or at least the time to handle it. Is when you can have those voice, or at least voice to voice conversations. But, and I mean, this kind of goes, with just about anything. Like even if you're talking about like the way that you're being treated by a business. And I don't mean one you work for. I mean the one that you're paying money to get a service. If you don't feel like the service is satisfactory, and I'm not talking about like just like being a Karen, go get your manager and that type of thing. But like, just simply by having a little bit of decorum and having a like what you said, polite but firm conversation, it goes so far, man. It goes such a long way, like often, like you would hear people, complaining about airline service. And I'm one of those people, like I fly often, and, some airlines are better than others and that kind of thing. Look, if you want to get like bumped up to business class or something like that, say for example, the plane isn't full, and there's room for you to be able to move up, having a conversation can get you those types of things, by bringing something to people's attention, where you feel like that you've been wronged or something like that, So they'll hook you up, like if you go about it the right way. If you go about it from the pissed off customer frame and things like that, that's not likely to go the way that you want it to go,
Exactly.
Because they're going to get defensive. They'll try to fix what they just give to get you up. Bare minimum. They'll probably do something, but they're not going to go out of their way, So, that's stuff that I really had to work through myself. Like I said before, man, like this was a real issue for me, was being confrontational when you should be confrontational, and which goes to show, by the way, we can, we have the agency to be able to change characteristics and qualities about ourselves. Too many people get stuck in life by thinking, well, this is just the way I am. And it's like, well, if you don't like it, why don't you do something about
change it? Yeah, like most likely that person is not like that. He's like that because he believed he is like that,
right.
Exactly, because he has framed his mind that, for example, someone like, someone who's very lazy. If you frame that you are a lazy person in your mind, you're going to reinforce that belief because that's your belief. You will like find proofs and do things to reinforce that belief. On the other hand, if you believe the opposite, you will try to, reinforce that belief and take action and, just try to do other things. And even if, let's assume you're actually lazy, but your mind will still proceed. It is not lazy. It's like, you did something at least, and it will look at the positive side of it entirely.
Right.
So
Now, yeah, there's a difference between saying I'm lazy and I'm being lazy.
yep.
Right. So, it's the same thing is suggesting to somebody like, you're like, man, that was a stupid move. I'm not stupid. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't say you were stupid. I'm just saying that move was stupid.
Move was stupid. Yeah,
and that goes back to what we were talking about before about separating the behavior from the person. And that can be right back at yourself too. Having those difficult conversations with yourself. What is that? That's just being honest with yourself.
Yep.
A lot of times people, what they'll do is they'll have, they'll put together some type of framework of something, based on a narrative that they've heard, that they've, maybe seen a few times in their life. We see this all the time, right? Like, I mean, 9 times out of 10, that's why somebody is racist, because they heard a couple of things, they saw a couple of things, and now they have a narrative.
Yep, exactly. They don't even know, they might not even have met that person. It's just like,
right,
because you've heard a certain narrative about it.
Right, exactly. Like, I mean, you see this, it can be anything, like, I did a boot camp about a month ago now, I guess it was, in LA. And one of the guys that was coming to that boot camp was from Australia. And he had sent me a DM prior to this. And he's like, hey, he's like, I'm really scared of guns, man. And I don't know what to, I'm really worried about the guns in America. And I was like, what? Like I was, dude, like I was empathetic in my response, but when I read it, I was laughing. I was laughing, and so, and it's all because of. And my guess is you probably see it in India too, for that matter.
I get it a lot. Forget about other stuff. I get it a lot because I play in I talk to people and play with other communities, right?
Yeah.
The first thing they ask me is, is 90% of India, phone scammers, because that's how they know, you probably know that as well. I think you even mentioned it at one point, some or the other. Like basically Indians fake calling and asking for a credit card and info and stuff. Yeah. Like that is so common that's the narrative of Indians. Apparently, there's only 2 variants. A, they'll be crazy smart, Einstein level freaks of nature.
Yeah.
Or B, Indian scammers, which one, that's the question I get. Which one are you? And I'm like, well,
yeah. You should be like, no, not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I'll prove it to you. Why don't you give me your credit card number and we'll see how safe it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so
that's the narrative. Yeah,
the news that he saw and blah blah blah, all this. I told him, I was like, bro, look, man, I was like, I will be shocked if you even ever see a gun while you're here. Yeah. I would be amazed. I was like, unless you just happen to find yourself in a gun shop or Walmart. You're not going to see a gun. I mean, maybe a cop having a gun on his side, but I mean, just
that's a call.
Walking around. It's not the Wild West, no one's going to be walking around the street, pat, 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 I was like, dude, I'm like, man, you got nothing to worry about, bro. Nothing.
No.
And he's like, okay, all right. And then, what's funny too is I did a boot camp, right before that. And one of the guys, and this surprised me a little bit more. One of the guys at this boot camp is from Canada. All right. And Canada's like America Junior, basically.
Yeah.
So I mean, literally I could see Canada 2 blocks from here, so there's a lot of intermingle of culture,
Culture, and
his family was worried about it. Like, oh, there's so many guns floating around and because I was telling him about, I was like, man, I got this DM from dude, check this out. And he was just like, man, my family was telling me the same thing. And I'm like, what? Like, but yeah, so these types of narratives get built, like you got people who are just like stupid racists who have never even met anybody of the race that they're racist against.
Yep, exactly.
But they see something on the news. They see, somebody tells them, oh, I knew this one guy. He was no good, or whatever. And now what they have built in is cognitive bias. So the only things that are going to stand out to them are the things that fit that narrative, and it reinforces it. So when we're being honest with ourselves or dishonest with ourselves, really, we're looking for things to fit that narrative
exactly,
to make that dishonesty honest in our own mind. It's cognitive bias is something else, man. Like I had a buddy of mine who one of my best friends, and this guy, he was on the outs with his girlfriend at the time. They had just recently broke up, and he was starting to think that he had made a bad choice. He broke up with her, and no, hold on. She broke up with him. They got back together, and then he broke up with her. Okay, and so now he's thinking, well, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should try to get back together with her and things like that. And so, of course, he calls me, because who else is he going to call about something like that? So, of course, he calls me and we're talking, and he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I think I'm getting a sign from the universe that I'm supposed to get back together with her. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, everywhere I go, I keep seeing her type of car. And I'm like, well, what kind of car does she have? Oh, a Toyota Camry. I'm like, dude,
that's like, God.
That's like, yeah, like half of cars.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like a very common color. It was like red or something, And I'm like, well, yeah, man, of course you keep seeing it. The only reason that you even notice it is because you're just aware of would you ever even notice that if you didn't know her?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like your eyes kind of scan for it. Like you will notice that, especially when guys have a breakup or something, whenever they go out, they subconsciously just scan for that same person, if to see, they're also there. Or
we look for things that are familiar to us.
Exactly.
That's just human nature. I mean, it goes back to caveman days. You're looking for familiar surroundings, familiar people, because you're safe.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. He's seeing these cars, left and right, because those types of cars are left and right. So of course he's seeing it, and he's picking up on it because it's familiar to him. Had he never known what kind of car that she drove, that sign from the universe wouldn't exist. And that's what I saw. I was like, dude, no, man, that's not a sign from the universe. That's not even coincidence. That's just, like, a billion people have that car,
Exactly.
It's like, it's almost like saying, yeah, man, I think I'm getting a sign from the universe. I keep seeing women. She turns out she's a woman.
Oh, like, duh.
Okay. So
right.
Yeah. So if we're being honest with ourselves, we have to really actually be honest with ourselves. It can't be what type of narrative do these things fall into? I'm a big believer in that you should question, why do you believe what it is that you believe? Put it to scrutiny, because I promise you that most people, if I come to them and I'm trying to give you a pitch, right? I'm trying to sell you on something. I did real estate for a lot of years. So I've done this many times, all right, where I'm pitching somebody on something, okay? Now, that person is going to, they're going to put me to scrutiny. Am I legit? Am I trying to scam them? Am I being honest with them? What's my character of person? Am I somebody that they can trust? you know. But we don't do that to ourselves. It's like, why do I think this? You know, why do I believe this narrative about this? You know, but one person that's really, really good at that is Jordan Peterson. Like he takes what he believes and he looks at it from every perspective, every other angle. I mean, logical angle. You know what I mean? Every logical way to look at this thing that he believes. You know, and can he chip away at that from other narratives? You know, like, or is it solid? Is there substance to it? And if if it's not substantial, he re-questions his beliefs about that sort of thing. You know, but if it stands up to this type of scrutiny, this type of scrutiny, this type of scrutiny, well, now he's going to hold on to that because he identifies that as being truth. Abraham Lincoln, when he was elected president, one of the things that he did was he made his cabinet, you know, all his advisors, you know, like here's this guy that's the economics, you know, head of economy. Here's this guy that's head of, you know, the military. Here's this guy that's head of agriculture, you know, all these different departments, right? The president appoints these people. They're not elected, you know, it's like, I'm the president. I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. All right. And so what he did was he picked people who all disagreed with him on almost everything. Like the other political party, basically, is what he did. Like he picked people that were smart, knew what they were doing, but they didn't necessarily agree with him and his stance on these issues, right? And that way he knew he never had a yes man. They would just go along and get along, you know. And like, well, he's the president. I'm riding his coattails, so I'm just going to tell him what he wants to hear. You know, he knew that wouldn't be the case. And he also knew that if his arguments stood up to whatever they were telling him, that he was right. And that was the way to go.
Exactly.
Really smart, you know, but we don't do that with ourselves. We just accept the way we think is the way it is.
Just accept. Yes. Yep.
You know, and it's like, but why? Why do you think that? You know, your thoughts are all influenced by external things. You know, there is no original thought. There's only thoughts that are built on other thoughts. You know, it's like, if you want an original thought, man, why don't you imagine a color that doesn't exist?
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck. Good luck with that. If you do come up with a color, it's going to be based off another color.
Yeah, I somewhere down the line, you have seen it before. And I mean, like probably some corner of the mind, you have seen it and you're basically basing it off it. Like, let's say, assume you like, you know, find some weird mix of like pink and gray or some weird combo like that.
Yeah,
you would realize it.
Like if you go to the paint section at Home Depot, there's a million like different, you know, variations of red, white, blue. You know, you got sky blue, you've got navy blue, you've got ocean blue, you've got whatever.
What other side?
But they're all a variation of blue. You know, you come up with a prime color that doesn't exist. You can't. You know,
exactly.
And that's the way our thoughts work, right? Because nothing that we think is an original thought, it's been thought before. Even like inventions, you know, inventions are just an updated version of something that already exists. You know, I've got this cell phone here. You could say somebody invented the cell phone. Fair. But did they invent the telephone? No. Then you could say, well, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. That didn't exist before him. Okay, true. You're right. That didn't exist before him. But what type of what they did have was they had the I forget what's it called? The I can't remember, but it you know, like you would send not Morse code. I guess it's kind of like Morse code, but it was just like an electronic signal.
Typewriter type. Like fax type something.
Thing, you know.
You could click the thing via Morse code, and you could like, you know, basically it does the same on the other side, and you get the message. Sort of.
Right. And as a matter of fact, speaking of Abraham Lincoln, that's one of the big reasons the North won the war is because they had this wire system of communication as to where the South, their communication system was basically like give a guy a letter on a horse and off
And
he
he'll run
goes, you
like,
know what I mean?
yeah, off he goes, exactly.
Right. But so their communication is almost instant versus it might take a horseback rider 2 days to get to where he's got to go,
Yeah.
So, but so there again, it's like that was just a variation using similar concepts to build that out. What came before the wire signal thing? I don't know. You know what I mean? But there was something that prompted that,
Yeah.
So there's always something, that as an extension. So I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, there's not an original thought, man. What you think, there's a reason why you think it. Question it.
Yep.
Be honest with yourself. Have that difficult conversation with you, So, listen, guys, if the content and the information that we're talking about here today, if that resonates with you, I invite you to continue to listen to the podcast. We got at least 12 that I can think of episodes of this podcast. On top of that, there's about 160 videos on this YouTube channel, so look, if you're trying to do a deep dive into how to level up, how to better yourself in terms of health, wealth, relationships, this is a great outlet. It's not the only outlet, but obviously if you've listened this long, there's something that strikes a chord with you. So check that other content out. Also, become a member of the Facebook group. Like I said, I'm going to put the link in the description. So all you got to do is just boom and join. All right. Yep. So that's it, man. I feel like there's something else I should be plugging as well.
Facebook group?
I just said that.
Yeah.
Oh, if you have something that you want us to discuss, if you have something that you want us to talk about, feel free to reach out, man. Like drop a comment or, find me in the Facebook group or whatever. I'm easy to find, man. It's not hard to find me. So just reach out. That's it. Simple as that. So, cool. I think we're good. We good?
Yeah, we good.
Okay. Right. That's what's up. Yeah. All right. We will talk to you guys soon.
Peace. Peace. Bye.